which is, how did you become interested in speech pathology? And were you always interested in music, or did you always aspire to be both a speech pathologist and a musician?
Right. We always have a saying in our department that when you get into music, you really never know where it's going to lead you. And so I think very often, depending where we grew up and how we grew up and our family life, some of us realize that being a musician is a real job, and some of us, it's an unusual occupation for parents and families. Somehow I don't know, gravitated to the aspect of working one-on-one with children and adults that had disabilities. That interested me. I love to sing. I did a lot of choral things and when I was in high school and in college. And then gradually, as we know what music does, it sort of starts to pull us in more and more and more to what we really love. And so what was very interesting was that when I was a grad student at Columbia, they decided to have a huge gathering of otolaryngologists, ear, nose, and throat doctors, surgeons, the Juilliard John Houseman Acting School, the speech pathologists from Columbia University, and singers from the Juilliard School, and they decided to have a consortium and get together and talk about how to help professional voice users when they got into distress, how to support them. Something very new was coming out called the Alexander technique that no one had ever heard of. So they put the group all together and started talking about the care and how to care for the professional voice, which has actually become a specialty now among speech pathologists and otolaryngologists, ear, nose, and throat doctors, and surgeons. So gradually, I started working in the hospital with people with voice disorders and took voice lessons on the side. And my voice teacher in the city said, you know, eventually it would really help you learn how to read music instead of listening to all the things you have to sing off of Marilyn Horne recordings. She was a pretty good person to listen to, but nonetheless. And so I worked all day and went to Juilliard at night, and that's how I started. And then when the San Francisco Opera would come and apply for summer programs, and they had a tour, and they had a fellowship program, and so I felt like I had the financial wherewithal at that point in time to leave for a job that lasted for more than 1 month. Leave something secure and go to something insecure. But clearly I went like the Roadrunner, so fast. It was an easy choice and a challenging choice, but I don't think we find music. I think it kind of finds us, and that's how I got my start.
My question is the next question. I'm Andrew. Ranging from Despina to Mrs. Lovett, it's truly incredible to see how many parts you have played. And I'm sure these parts have not only been fun, but have consisted of a lot of hard work, especially when you jump from one role to another. Over the years, have you developed a system to physically pace yourself, or how do you deal with vocal fatigue or artistic fatigue?
That's a really good question, and I think that's sort of a lifespan question. Because now I'm in the cast, and I'm usually the oldest person on the stage. Almost always the oldest person on the stage. And I'm surprised how quickly everybody bounces back except me. So when everybody says, do you want to go out after the rehearsal? I'm just happy to get home in one piece. Yeah. But I think it's a lot about pacing. You learn that as a freshman. You learn that as a graduate student. It's about pacing and your health, because in my case, I'm my own instrument. And that's really tricky. Over a period of time as a singer, the pieces that you're involved in and the roles that you play are very different. Where some of you will be working on the concerto for a long time and maybe play it when you're 25, play it again when you're 35, play it again when you're 45. It doesn't always happen that way as a singer. So, of course, our instrument ages, is all cartilage, just like the cartilages in our knees and our wrists. With age comes wisdom, yeah, and knowledge, but we don't always have that energy and the resistance to bounce back that we did when I was your age. So the parts become different, and the parts become more fun, quite frankly, sometimes, in a way. This year was my biggest challenge, I think, that I've ever had. This year, by dumb, crazy, who knows what, karma, luck, an opera company that I worked for a lot, Saratoga Springs, New York, called and said, we would like you to do this role in Così fan tutte. We would like you to do the Spina. And that role is usually taken by a younger soubrette soprano. But their idea was they would have this character be older so that her relationship with another character in the opera, Don Alfonso, would be one of a relationship long in the past that continued on, and there was rivalry, and there was still attraction there. So they had 2 older singers and 4 younger singers in the cast. And I realized when they asked, I hadn't sung that part for 30 years, and it was the very first job I ever had. 30 years ago, this month, 1981, before even your parents were born. And I went back and found my contract, because I always keep my contracts, everyone I've ever had in a file at home, and I had 4 performances, and I made $250. And I can remember thinking, wow, this is the most amazing thing. And as my husband, Professor Swenson, said to me, you know, $250 is still a lot of money to a musician. Yeah, even though it's 30 years later, yeah. But when I started to learn the piece, it was interesting. The music was so strongly in my head. The Italian had left. And just relearning it was a challenge vocally and otherwise. And for one of the few times this has happened to me, but I stood backstage, right, ready to go on, and realized I almost felt like I couldn't start to sing. Because the emotion of the whole journey. And I see all of you guys starting, and I see all of my friends now coping sometimes with a career that's ending performance-wise and beginning to come into teacher performers and the energy. So it was an amazing summer. In that very moment, I realized how lucky we are, that we all do something that's a little bit unusual and special in that way, and what we can each bring, because there's always a different perception of this person's playing of the piano concerto and this other artist's playing, and the way we each play and the individuality that we have. And I think that's, we can't lose sight of that when we get caught up in this busy life as performers, and what I hope you will all become someday, teacher performers. There's a lot of burden, and I know I'm going on, but I'm now at another place as a teacher performer. And those of you who are here realize that some of your teachers still perform, some of them don't anymore. That's really tough too, to teach and perform and find the time to carve out time to practice personally and give so much to all of you each day with lessons.
As an opera performer who has to act constantly on the stage, how do you keep from letting emotional, personal issues into
I don't think you really ever don't have that happen. You know what I mean? Yeah. And maybe for you, because you know, I have 56 years right now on me, and everything that's happened to me along the way has infused the way I look at this business and the way I look at my singing. I think that when someone wants to sing Madame Butterfly, she sings it in a different way if it's a soprano that has had a child and a soprano that has not had a child. Because what she does is she knows she must kill herself, but her child has to go free, and her child has to leave her. So it's always, when your art is so closely there, it really can affect your performance. And sometimes you play and you fall apart. There's a loss of a parent or a grandparent, or you know, a relationship that falls apart. We wear it right here, or here, or here, or here. And I think that even though these things come to us, we can use those things as performers. We play and sing differently because we've experienced that life. And it happens. I can remember that my father died. He had a heart attack in the theater that I was performing. And it was, I saw out of the corner of my eye someone leave the theater. And an usher with somebody leave the theater, and I knew it was my father. And I just kept singing, and I finished the show. And 4 or 5 days later, he had a lot of heart problems, and he died. I was struck by the fact that I could finish, that I could go on automatic pilot. And then I thought, oh, singing's the best therapy, working's the best therapy, I'll just keep going. And that summer at the Carmel Bach Festival, I stood up and I started to sing the Bach B minor Mass, and only colored air came out of my mouth. I just realized I couldn't sing. And I got through it as best as I could. My husband was sitting in the 6th or 7th row, and he said, "Are you all right?" in the break, and I said, and he said, "Just sing to me and we'll get through it." So I think we have to sort of let those things in. And then something becomes so wonderful about our playing or our singing. But there's emotions that are there, you know, whether we write or compose the music, or we look at the poetry, or we play, or it's going to be there. We also know that opera singers can be a little too dramatic. Yeah, in real life. In real life, too.
Amy's not here. Somebody jump in.
How does your body deal with the high travel demands of an international opera singer? For example, crossing different continents and time zones than having to perform right away.
Yeah, I think a lot about it, that's about planning. Some people react better to jet lag, fatigue, things like that than others. Certainly as a singer, the airline compartments, the drying effect, you know, have a lot of residual excuse me, effect on the voice. And that's something to consider. The sleep you get, you fly in, you get a little bit amount of sleep, and then you sort of jump in. I think you learn as musicians how much you can practice, how much rest you need, how much sleep you need. It's so individual that we can't make a blanket statement about this is what you need to do. But you bring up a really good point, and I think it really goes with every instrument in how you manage your life. So perhaps it always seems like going to Europe the 3rd day is the killer. You're there, you get through the first, do you ever notice that? It's like you can make it through the tour, you can make it through the first day. The second night, the third night, you can't sleep. You're all discombobulated. And it also is whether you fly this way or that way, you know, east to west, west to east. But it's a challenge. And the other thing I used to do is I used to always make sure, and I think no matter what your instrument is, that when you travel, you sort of know how to pack, know what you need, know that you have those drugs, those personal care products, those things that really help you. If you have allergies, what kind of medication do you take? If you have migraines, what kind of medication do you take? You take that with you, because in different countries, the dosages are different, the pills are different, the medication is different. If you had heart problems or blood pressure issues, that's really important as a musician to have sort of what you really need, whether it's a certain tea you like to drink, or, you know, your teddy bear, don't laugh, you know, pictures from home, you know, I've seen those violin cases open up. Yeah, that's all a part of, in a way, you know, who you're carrying with you. Who are your people? Who are your support system? And you probably need to do the same things health-wise, I would think, yeah.
Hi, I'm Katie. Your bio mentions your vocal health seminars. Do you have any advice for musicians in general on avoiding technique-related injuries, and if such an injury does happen, how to recover psychologically?
Wow, that's a big one, because we want to talk about recovering health-wise, and we want to talk about recovering psychologically. That's a big span. So let's talk about health-wise first. I think we could go around the table, and whatever instruments you play, you know well what your injuries could be, what your potential injuries would be. Repetitive injuries, stress injuries. Sometimes something as stupid as reaching up in the airplane to put your bag up. Okay, rotator cuff. Oh my gosh, you know. So I think being in the best possible shape you can be in physically is helpful. I think knowing and having a village. I know this gets a little hackneyed when we say this, but I think it's very important to be aware that your teachers all know the physicians and the therapists and the massage therapists and the people that you need to go to when you have an injury, the doctors that can help you, the surgeons, God forbid, that could help you if you needed it. But so there's better living through chemistry, you know, in a way. So that's the first part of that. And to know that we're all vulnerable. And maybe sometime becoming vulnerable, not that we want to have tendinitis or we want to have a problem, it's a wake-up call for you, as young as you are, to know that your bodies can only do so much. You bounce back much quicker at 20 than you bounce back at 30 or 40 or 50. In our profession, and there's been a lot of wonderful surgical options for singers that get into trouble. There's a lot of care, there's a lot of body work, Feldenkrais yoga. It impacts all of our disciplines here. So we can go for help. And certainly there are some people who are psychologists who deal specifically with people who are performers. Very often, no surprise, they've been performers themselves. No surprise, and they want to help others. So I think that, you know, there's always going to be a time where things feel overwhelming. Recuperating from an injury, or in cases of maybe singers my age, and maybe players, you know, too, where you leave the stage, you don't perform as much because you physically aren't able to, you begin to teach more. There's a sense of grief involved in that you lose something in a way. And I start to even now prepare myself for when I won't sing every summer. What will I do? Where will I go? How will I reinvent my life as a musician? But I think that we have to also realize that it's foolish not to take advantage of psychological help if we need it. You know, you have that option here at school as students, and if after 3 or 4 sessions someone says, you seem like you're really on the right track, or sort of lead you in the right way, or how you cope with an injury. What do you do while you're recuperating? This is huge. There's many things to do, and there's a way to handle it well, and I imagine a way to handle it poorly. So I think with both of those issues, for me especially, and in our group, vocal health is very important. I go in every year to speak to the freshmen about their instrument. Singers are woefully stupid about their makeup of their instrument. And I say to them, would there be a pianist in a room that if I said, what's that pedal on the left for? And where's middle C? Would a pianist know that? And they all say yes. Yes, okay? And then I say, now I want you to all raise your hands. How many people can tell me the 4 cartilages of the larynx? Yeah, that's what I get. So what we've done is we've started to prepare our young singers for, this is what you need to do. This is how you need to practice. Those of you who are maybe TAs, start to teach not only how, you know, how to practice, because there we get into problems too, don't we? Yeah. And a lot of times young singers, and especially singers, will say, oh, I practiced an hour and a half yesterday. And expecting me to jump for joy, and I say, are you nuts? You know, you have an instrument that's vulnerable. But they thought that that was good. I'm not even going to talk to the pianists in this group, because I know you guys, you're all crazy. And your keyboards don't give out as fast as my keyboard gives out. So I think it's a really good question, because we have to learn how to manage. We're not Superman, we're not Superwomen. It's going to happen. Things are going to happen, and know the best doctors, know the people to go to, know the specialists, get a second opinion. All those things are really huge for no matter what. Yeah.
try to perform it in a similar way?
Sometimes you have no choice. You prepare musically the same way. A lot of my career involved singing the coloratura Rossini repertoire. So I would have in the back of my mind 4 or 5 different cadenzas. So then I would see what the director wanted, and if he wanted me to fall, or he wanted me to run in a different direction, or what he wanted with the staging, I would put in whichever cadenza would suit the staging. You know, if I had to drop something in a well, I would do color turn down this way. You know, if I had to do something behind somebody's back, I would turn and I would come back. So that's a way to look at something new and fresh each time. But usually, you don't have that opportunity. What's I think interesting is that a director will come and maybe the opera will be put in the 1700s, and someone will move the opera to the 2000, make it more contemporary. So we do have that option to feel that the character's different. We walk differently in a dress from the 1700s than we do in a dress from 2000. I think you always have to make sure you're not on automatic pilot. You know, it can't be automatic. And sometimes the problem's solved by making it interesting because you have other people in a cast. Much like maybe if you come and you're playing chamber music and you're going to a chamber music concert and it's not your regular partners, or you're sitting in a different section of an orchestra, or you're playing solo oboe with a different tenor of the Blake songs, and you play and sing differently with different people. Have you noticed that? It's why quartets sort of find their group. We feed off each other. It's kind of the same for singers, you know. Sometimes you're with a group of singers where you're just thinking to yourself, well, there's that one guy, I'm going to be really happy to see the back of him. And then there's people who come into a cast and you feed off each other, you play. You know they have a quick sense, and all of a sudden the show becomes a little different. Or the way you play, or the way you phrase when you're playing with a group becomes a little different. Or the way a pianist and a singer will play differently as a collaborative pianist, depending on if you're playing with a singer, or a violinist, or a cellist. And so sometimes that happens more than just something different about the singing.
Okay, my name is Kate. I have the next question. As a singer, you certainly know how to command a room, and I was wondering if you had any tips for us for holding an audience's attention, whether it's in a musical or a non-musical setting. And I was wondering what the best way is to present yourself in a way that's engaging without seeming overbearing.
Well, how am I doing? Okay. Well, here, that's really interesting, because what I think upsets me sometimes when I'll have students come in and they'll say, I'm just a music education major. I'm not a performance major. And I say, aha. Well, let's all look back in our lives and see the people who made the most dent in our hearts and brains as musicians. And they were probably teachers, and probably often in the school, whether it's the 5th grade teacher that you loved, or the kindergarten teacher that just infused her life with music, or your high school music teacher, or people that really inspired you. So educators are performers. And every time as an educator you stand up, you perform. Okay? When you go and represent yourself in a concert, you have to represent yourself in the best possible way. You represent yourself to people who come to a benefit that perhaps you're doing and giving. It would behoove you all to go back to your high schools and volunteer to do master classes for young violinists or flutists or horn players, so that they can hear excellence. Play for them and then give them a class. Because kids today don't always know what excellence is, and they sure don't know what excellent singing is, you know? Yeah. So I think your question is really an important one, because how we represent ourselves is really huge. Certainly in the way we speak, how we speak, and your generation speaks with its thumbs. So I'm always astonished when people are sitting at a meal and there's 4 people like this, and nobody's communicating. And this is kind of funny but kind of tragic, because when you young artists go out and go to performances and at the end there's a dinner with patrons and sponsors, you need to know how to communicate with not only your own generation, but generations of people older than you and younger than you, especially the generations of people who are the patrons, who are there to support you, who are paying your salary. You are part of that wonderful opportunity to show them what you do and show them how passionate you are in that way. So I think we have to take every opportunity to be able to talk about what's important, to be able to talk about why you play, to, as you go through your life, journal or write things down, or keep I don't say blog and Twitter, I don't know, because I don't really know what that is, but anyway, I'm about letters. So have that opportunity to be a mentor, to be a good representative, and to make sure that you have that sense of yourself. Now, that's only at parties and classes and things like that. How about the way you walk on stage? That really shows how you represent yourself as an artist too. We can all smell arrogance a block away, right? In anybody that you watch, if there's somebody who's an arrogant performer, they're on stage with a mirror, But you have to walk on with some kind of sense of joie de vivre, with an energy, with a positiveness. I once did a master class with Mr. Thompson's brass group, and I was just astonished the way each of them approached the piano. Shuffling, their horn was like this, they were walking up there ready to play. I said, okay guys, let's all be opera singers, which I think probably to them was a fate worse than death. I said, because just in the way you hold this instrument, and then someone said, yeah, my favorite trumpet player walks out with a trumpet cradled in his arm, like this. Oh, my favorite one walks out like this. So in a way, just the way you walk out and begin your concert is so valuable in helping people to be drawn into your artistry. And you didn't say a word, How you finish at the end of a piece. Do you sit there or do you hop off the bench? How do you finish? How do you perform? Video yourself. Well, you'll learn a lot. Especially my singers who like this. This is my freshmen. They're all checking the beat. Yeah. They're making sure that they're in time. Yeah. Do you have any tension? No. Yeah. Yeah. I don't feel tense, but their hands are like, lobsters. Yeah. Find out those things. See how your performance energy goes. I think that'd be helpful too. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi, sir, maestro.
Please share with us how you manage to maintain excellence with your teaching career, performing career, and what really motivates you every morning when you walk into a classroom, years after years after years. What really gives you the motivation to teach maybe the same subject, like the pedagogy? And would you also please share with us, as an opera singer for most of your life, besides making a living and doing what you like to do, is there any specific goals that you're trying to achieve for yourself or for the audience?
The specific goal I have this year is to get tenure. For those of you that someday will be in academia, it's called hoop jumping. Yeah. But if I got it or it didn't, I really wouldn't do anything different. And I think that not all performers should become teachers. Because you have to be willing to learn more than how you did it. You have to learn metaphor, like we talk about in pedagogy. Go to the other studio classes and learn how to teach, because we teach through metaphors so often. Some of you that can really get your hands on your instrument, it's a little easier than us, because we can't get our hands on our instrument. We can't get in there and move those muscles. So I think if you're interested in teaching, start to listen and watch other people teach, or ask your teachers if you can sit in on other students' lessons, if you have that interest. Because then it's sort of a natural way to move into becoming a performer teacher. I think what's really great for me in the last 10 years that I've been here is that I've had the opportunity to be a teacher and a performer at the same time. It hasn't been easy. School has been very supportive of me. Since I got my first contract here to begin teaching, I've done 35 opera contracts in the last 10 years. And that's been really tricky to negotiate. Sometimes I have to leave for 2 weeks, and sometimes someone comes in, sometimes my own teacher comes in to teach for me. He's retired while I'm away. I enjoy that sense of mentorship with him. Any role that I have to sing, or anytime I sing in public, I go down to New Jersey and work with my coach, or I work with my own teacher. So I keep up with that, because my basic technique is sort of going down this way as we age, in that way. And hopefully those will be the people that will tell me, now it's time to stop. I think the fact that I have the balance of performing and teaching really helps me, because I look forward to the summer where I don't even see anybody under the age of 25, yeah, except on stage with me. And then I sit there in August, and I specifically don't teach the last 3 weeks in August. And then I come back, and then I see the freshmen, and I see the grad students. No, the seniors are worse. Seniors are worse. And some days I'd rather set my head on fire than walk in that room in Gib Street, you know? I just like, and then, you know, then something happens in a lesson where I see myself in my stingers, or I see that we've made a break, there's been a breakthrough, and I say, this is a damn good job. And I believe, I really believe, that I've been able to maintain my career longer because I teach. If you're verbalizing what you do every day to someone and problem solving, which we do as teachers, you're going to have that translated into your own performance, into your own singing. So I think it's been a wonderful opportunity to balance out. Did I answer? I wasn't sure if I answered the last part of your question.
Well, it was your goal. What are you trying to achieve as a performer, as
Yeah.
an opera singer on stage?
Survival. Yeah, because it is rather short-lived, then, as opposed to, you know, in a way. Our bodies age differently. Some people say, I can't stand the travel, I can't stand the life. Having a child certainly changed my philosophy about travel. You know, I can remember, like, even in high school, I'm saying, you know what, you were the only mother. You were the only mother that wasn't at Colonial Day in 4th grade. Every other mother was there. Yeah. And I said, you know what, you're the only kid that's been in Italy and France and London. You're the only one. Yeah. So it's a trade-off in that way. But it's been tricky. It's been tricky to manage being a performer teacher. But my worst fear was going away, where the students would be left on their own. So what I do if I go away for 3 weeks, because as an opera singer, you at least go away for 3 weeks. And so I'll make up my lessons in advance. I Skype my students once a week, or call them on a phone once a week. Someone comes in to teach for me 1 or 2 of the weeks. And then I specifically leave a week, at least when they're all on their own. Why? Why? Why do you think?
They can miss you.
Thank you, but I'm not sure that happens all the time. Yeah. Why would I leave them on their own? Why do you think I really believe in that?
Trying to be their own teacher.
Right. Because who really teaches us? We teach ourselves. And we need to learn to be independent. We We need to learn how to sort of problem solve, and not to get into trouble, you know, but to learn how to manage and to think through that process. And I'm only a phone call away, or, you know, a type away, an email away. I think it's valuable. I think they learn a lot. And a doctoral student or a master's student will lead my studio class for a week. And that's valuable for them, just to move in that way. Yeah.
And my question is, what skills do they really strive to instill into your students in regards to their careers, not just the musicianship?
We have a rather odd burden as singers, which is that our instrument matures at a later time. Our art form matures at a later time. So in between 35, 40, 45, 25 to 45, let's say, that's really where the instrument takes off. So there's a lot of work before that to be done. If you're a dancer by 35, you need to think about what you're going to do with your career, because the dance careers are 35 and 40. Some great, great artists have danced into their 50s and 60s, but it's rare. So I think we have to make sure for the singers here that they don't do too much too soon. That I try to tell them these programs would be appropriate, these auditions would be appropriate, these are too soon to do. Because you're all very impatient people. Right? Yeah. Because your musical brains are here and your technique is here. And some of you have made progress like rabbits, and some of you are turtles, but you know, we're all getting to the same place. So I think we have to give them the opportunity to know how to fail and be criticized and then pick themselves up. You have to learn and teach them how to give themselves a criticism sandwich. You know what I mean by that? Where there's bread and ham or hummus, depending on if you're vegetarian or not. So the pieces of the bread are the positive things that surround the core of what needs to be fixed. Learn how to give criticism. Learn how to take criticism. Learn how to manage your practicing. Learn skills so that you know how to, much like you guys are learning here with Mr. Dozer, balance a budget, have a part-time job, know how to go into, you know, represent yourself well in a job interview. All those things are other skills we can give you here too. I think just talking one-on-one with your teacher and where he or she sees you. Because we all go in different directions, you know, and that's valuable skills to try to give. And to be able to help each other, you know, some people are less willing to do that, others are more willing to be good colleagues. I think that's really important.
Norman here.
He's out of town.
Okay, will somebody read Norman's question?
I will read for him. Norman says, what led you to getting management, and what are the pros and cons of having a manager?
Okay, good question. What led me to get management is I needed it. It's not the easiest thing to do. Many of you are able to somewhat manage yourselves now because in your generation there's websites, things like that. So you can market yourself much more easily than my generation could. My generation of singers and artists, there was a community concert circuit for a time. I've had 2 agents in my life, and presently this agent that I have now has been my agent for a very long time. Started out as friends that we met, and he was a singer who went to management. You always manage yourself. Agents always like to think that they manage you, and sometimes they do, not well, and sometimes well. But you always manage yourself because you always need to promote yourself in the best way. You need to know what you can do and what you can't do. So sometimes an agent may say, oh, I know you can play this, you can do this really well, you can really do this, and you'll say, no, I don't want to do that. Or you'll come to an agent and say, I want to try this, and he'll say, oh, no, I don't think I can get you a job doing that. And then you get a job and you're really wonderful, and he says, see, I told you you'd be great. Yeah. So I think that's very important, that sense of being able to manage yourself. When you go out to get an agent, the best thing I think that they can do is represent you with integrity. So you need to know how your management is representing you. You need to talk to the people that have hired you to make sure that they know that the person is asking fair fees and that you are also being represented with integrity. I think that you also need to believe in the power of the thank you note, which agents do not send out, so that's up to you to send out. Whether it's to my generation in a card with something called a stamp, or to your generation of people in an email, beautifully written that doesn't say hey, okay? Yeah. That you assume in your generation that you call people Mr. until they say, call me Joe or whatever, you know? These are some of the things. Now, the agent will negotiate fee. I always relished the fact that I had an agent because I would basically do just about anything for free. Because that's what, and free for chocolate. So sometimes the agent is better able to represent you when you are sort of not very good at self-promotion. I think that's valuable. The agent has to be someone who really believes in your talent and is just excited about your talent. And when you find someone like that, that's very valuable. Very valuable. Because agents will see dollar signs. Press people will see dollar signs. But they need to believe in you as much as your mother does. Even more. Yeah. Which probably is always considerable. Yeah.
What were the first steps you took in getting connected with the appropriate people?
Yeah, when I was in San Francisco, the value and maybe an advantage that I would have as a singer is that you're viewed in different venues. You're viewed in different performances. Some people really do well in auditioning. I stink. I'm awful at auditioning. Awful, awful, awful. I mean, I'm better now, maybe than I was, but maybe even worse now because I never do it as much. I still go down to New York in December on audition. But I often got work by being seen in performance. And that may happen to some of you too. So never underestimate the importance of creating your own performance opportunities. Getting out there and playing, being a part of that, having your business card there to be able to hand to someone. Playing at weddings. You'll be surprised who comes to weddings. You know, having a group of people that if you can't do it, you help each other out, who can sub, you know, those kinds of things. And so once I was doing more performing, then I sent out lots of letters to agents who basically didn't respond. And then you go through the next sort of step, and that was to ask somebody in a place of importance if they would vouch for you or if you could use their name as a reference. That would be very important. Someone who's head of the San Francisco Opera is a pretty good reference. Your teachers would be good references. Very often we're asked, you know, who might be best for this job? And keep in contact with your friends here as you graduate, the alumni center here, your teachers. I think it's all about creating those opportunities and being seen and making use perhaps in your generation of the video, that you video your performances, that you make sure you have a video of your senior recital, that they can see you as a performer and have that archived. Because I think that's going to be very important. People now want to see you on the web as opposed to, we used to go to New York, you know, all the time to audition for things. But now they'll see you perform on a website that you can send them a link to your performance. I think that's the way to start. Yeah. And know as much about them as you know about, you know, if you walk into an agent, you don't know who this person is or who they represent. If they represent your favorite performer or your favorite pianist and you're a pianist, and this person's playing when you were in high school in Des Moines, Iowa, They came through on a concert tour and you were mesmerized by their playing. And this agent represents them. All the better. Who knows? I just made that up. You never know. You never know. Yeah.
I have the next question, and I was wondering with a varied career like yours, you kind of sort of touched on this, but about the amount of trust and power you give someone like a manager or a booking agent or a publicist. And I guess, have they only looked for ways to advance your performing career, or have you had like people, managers that have found or looked for teaching opportunities for you?
No, you know, it's kind of tricky because once as a performer you move into academia, sometimes it works against you. So I think there's some agents that, because in other words, you're not able to pick up and go. So it might be something to look at later or to have a discussion with somebody who's willing to manage you in that way as you teach. I think that sometimes your priorities and your own feeling about your own career changes as you go along, and people change agents. Just as agents will drop singers because they, or performers because they don't make a certain amount of money. They don't make a commission, or they don't pay their commission. Horrible, you know? Your agent has his commission, it's his rent too. So that's what I'm saying, learn, take the top off, your 10%, your 20%, even though you go, oh my God. Take it off the top, put it in your account so that you can pay who you need to pay. That's really important. Sometimes artists have been dropped as they go through their career because they're just not making the amount of money. It's a business for the agent. And sometimes it's not, and sometimes you have a rapport with someone that you've been with, like me, for 20 years, and another agent who I was with before, who I felt didn't work as hard because I got to a place where people, opera companies would call and say, we want to hire her, and he would call me and say, oh, I just got you this job. You know, you get your own work. You really do. You know. But you need them, and you need their ears, and you need their ability to send you out. It's very different maybe for singers than for other instruments. Piano. So I think that you always have to balance that, Alex. It's always, it's a changing thing. And who knows what music will be like 15 years from now? That's what's really kind of disconcerting, isn't it? The rules change. The rules change a lot in that way. So we don't know the entrepreneurship and having to manage your own career and build a website. Who knew that 20 years ago? That wasn't necessary, but now it's a good skill for your generation to have, to know how to build your website, how you want to represent yourself in that way. As a teacher or a performer teacher, I think. Yeah.
Should I ask
Sure,
mine?
yeah, go ahead.
Hello.
Hi.
I think you had answered. You had two managers. You're having one that recently you worked for a while. Are the good managers more expensive? Like, they take more commission?
No, because commission is across the board for singers. 10% for opera and 20% for concert. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes if you do a benefit concert, you can get someone to say that you did this concert, you were not paid anything, but you can use it for your taxes. That's valuable, that you provided a service for a benefit concert. Not if you did, you know, that you're giving the money that you earn to a specific organization. If you believe in you know, hospice care or helping kids with disabilities, and you create, you know, a benefit, then all the money would go to them. But if you agree to participate in a benefit that is really very important to you or your family or something like that, that's helpful to financially manage yourself. But it's, for singers, it's sort of specified. Now, many people hire press agents when they're going to make a big debut. If you won the Tchaikovsky competition, I don't think you need a press agent. You get a lot of press, you know what I mean? Yeah. So, but if you are going to make a debut, or your quartet is going to play in Weill Hall, you might want to pay someone to help produce some of the press. That can be costly, but it can be worth it. Yeah. And don't think that big artists don't have press agents. You know, yeah. So Mr. Gilbert, you know, down there at the Philharmonic, yeah, he gets a big page with he and his mom in the New York Times, because his mom plays violin in his wonderful orchestra. And it's Credit Suisse, you know, that's sponsored, and all that, that's worked up by a press agent. The orchestra has a press agent, and they'll put that out there. Those big pictures of Renee Fleming that were around, that's part of the press agent to encourage that sort of sensibility. And sometimes for young groups, it might be worth it. It might be worth it. You're going to a town or you're touring around, you have 4 or 5 little gigs, and someone says, okay, you know, I'll get your name in the paper, I'll get you an interview. And that's their job. So you would pay them a short retainer, maybe not for a whole big long time, but to help you promote your concert or your group. Some people do that. And that might be worth it in the long run sometime, if you're doing sort of a touring kind of thing.
Hi, I'm Peter. I guess you started to touch on this a little bit earlier as you were mentioning you're switching from your first manager. But my question was that, though I imagine managers generally want to help their clients out as much as possible, perhaps after some time they become complacent or disinterested. Yeah. And I was just wondering, what are some of the telltale signs that it's time to start looking for a new agent? And then, you know, how you go about doing that in a respectful way.
Well, I guess the worst sign was that they don't call you back. Yeah, that would be a bad sign, I would imagine. I don't know. Thank God it never happened to me. But then sometimes it's you have a sort of sensibility that some people are very ambitious, aggressive, tough. They get in there, they like to make deals. Sometimes they'll say, oh, if you want to hire Placido Domingo, you have to hire these 2 or 3 other singers. It's like a package. Sometimes that works. Gives the young singer an opportunity to move in and to be there. Or if somebody manages Yo-Yo Ma, and they also manage a young quartet starting out, that might be helpful to you. I think we can become complacent about things. I think management can become complacent about things. Sometimes we move on to different teachers, you know, in our lifetime of working, and sometimes you would move on to people who you sort of feel that they're not out there pushing as much as you need to. I think your gut will tell you, but it would be sort of foolish to show your hand. What you might do is have a very honest conversation saying, I'm feeling this way, can you help me figure out where I might go or what I might do before you say, I'm leaving, goodbye, and then you have no management. So, you know, it's worth it to be honest and have a conversation and say, I'm feeling this way, what can we come together with, what plans might you have that will help our group, or that will help me, or that will promote me in a new way that maybe we've been doing before.
Thank you.
That's good questions, you guys. Wow, I should be asking you these questions.
We have another Norman question.
Oh, I guess I will be Norman then.
You're much cuter than he is. Don't say that. He's cute, but you're cuter. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Norman says, how do you manage to balance your family, your teaching schedule, and your performance career? How do you decide what engagements or performances to take?
Well, I told you about in 4th grade, I was the only mother that wasn't there. Yeah. I think I had an odd life in a way. My career was mostly here, and I would go back and forth to Amsterdam, France, Netherlands, like that. My husband chose a career where he was Fest in an opera house in Germany, 2 opera houses. So we lived in Europe, we went back and forth, traveling, and we were married for about 11 years before we had our son. To me, that was a big decision because we had an option to stay in Germany and live there or come back to the United States. And then I have a number of friends who homeschool their children, which is some of you may have been homeschooled. It's a very viable option for people who are performers. I think that in my case, I felt like that wasn't what I wanted. I felt my son needed friends and a community. And so when he got to be 4, we really made the decision of what we wanted to do. The real decision was made probably by his father, who came home from 2 jobs in a row. One was in Palermo, I think, and one was in Venice, and we didn't take him to Venice because he had this fascination with water. He was obsessed. He was 3.5 or something, and he just would go to the water, and I thought, I'm not taking this kid to Venice. And so he was gone a long time, and Bob Swenson walked in the door, and Matthew just sat like this, and didn't run to him, and didn't go to him, and looked down. And I think that's it. I can't leave my son this long. We need to travel, or we need to figure out how to have our life this way. And that's where we began to look for performer teacher positions. Many other people who are performers, they'll take, people with them, or they'll homeschool their kids, and it works out great. So everybody's a little different. Or you have a partner perhaps with a family that one partner is maybe a lawyer or a doctor or a teacher, and they stay home and the other person teaches and travels. Everybody's got something different going on. So there's no one sort of way to do it. I know that the thing I was very on top about as a female performer, and that is that you can be up all night with the flu, and then still have to get up the next day and go to the playground at 8 o'clock and swing on the swings. And you have to, it takes a lot of energy to raise a child and be a performer at the same time. I usually had really responsible nannies to help me out. Often they were young singers who had graduated from grad school, needed the work, and so I would take them with me to the opera companies and make sure that the coaches there and the pianists there would help them on their day off work and coach their singing, and they would get a lesson in. So that would be part of what I did. And if they were really good, I gave them $100 extra at the end of the run, because I really wanted them to come back. I really wanted them to like us. Yeah. But what I mean is, I think, that was a way that I could be with someone who understood that if my call was 8:05, I had to be there at 8:05. Musicians understand that. We understand that you need to sleep, and that was really helpful to have help that could help us that way. But it really was a decision to come down to, and then just like a musical family, when we came here to live, we called everyone and said, where's a really good musical school district? And that was Penfield, and that's where we ended up. And so that was a big part of our life. We really didn't care about the soccer team, although we had a little soccer going in my house too. But I think each family life is so different. Each partnership is so different. I imagine asking how to manage family life might be a better question for Jeff Campbell. He's got a few more players in his house than I do. Yeah.
We have one more question for you, and that's from Nina, who is also not here. So I'll read Nina's question. She's cuter than me, too. What have you found to be the most challenging aspect of your career and your most fulfilling aspect of your career?
I think doing what I've done for the last 10 years. And that is having both worlds. I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky to have had the opportunity to do so many jobs, and to have a husband that really understands what it's like, because he's another musician. When you have a lousy lesson, you just can't get it together, you're frustrated about something, you need to have people around you that understand. I think that this has been my best time. I would imagine I would have said, certain performances stick out in my mind that are wonderful. The work together, the colleagues that you have, a lot of that sticks out in my head. If you sing in Vienna, and you realize that as you're singing an accompanied recit, and you look down in the orchestra and you see that the violinists are actually looking at you, not the conductor, because they're breathing with you, and they're watching how you sing. That's extraordinary. Just to hear the orchestra, when I was a Valkyrie in San Francisco, just to hear, 8 French horns, yikes. you know? The semblance of that feeling, those musical things, those experiences stick in my mind. And the one that was the most overwhelming was just going on a tour in a school in Nowhereville in Hawaii, way out, and looking at this sea of kids in every imaginable face, Asian, Caucasian, Hawaiian, Native Hawaiian. I'm just seeing the faces of these children all singing. I'm singing with them. Things like that will always stick with you guys, you know? But when I think of when it all came together, I think that I'm really lucky to be at this music school. It's a wonderful place. And I'm really lucky up until this point in time to be able to sing and perform. And so every day, every night I get to a theater, and I say, this could be the last time I sing this. I didn't think about that 15 years ago, but I think about it now. This could be the last time I'm standing on this particular stage. This could be the last time I'm sitting in a hotel room getting ready in Utah and looking at the mountains and going to the theater or wherever I've traveled. I'm a lot more thankful, grateful, and I think maybe this just might be the best time. I have a young son who's off to college, who is guided very well by the man standing at the back of the room in his musical life and his colleague. So he's in a good place, except he wants to be a musician. So all those years of putting him to bed with a stethoscope, it didn't work. Yeah. But it's about passing it on, guys. You know, if not to your own children, you know, it's about passing it on. So I see these questions and the energy that you have. You know, don't let them get you down. Find where you really, really want to sit as a musician. And it takes a village, so find your village and have a great life. Yeah, it's a great life.
Well, once again, giving us some great information, but also some inspiration. So thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. I mean, you know, you're never in black. Yeah, so here we go. Yeah.
All right, we'll take a 5-minute break and we'll come back. Part 2.